says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. Ukraine claims an evacuation bus was attacked by the Russian troops in Kiev. Russian airstrikes target residential areas in Sumi. Ukraine claims 18 civilians killed. Republic is the only channel reporting from Korostan bombing sites just a few hundred kilometers away from the Chernobyl nuclear plant.
Заряжай! Заряжай второй, матерый! Огонь, огонь! РПГ, заряжай! Заряжай второй, матерый! Огонь, огонь! РПГ, заряжай! Заряжай второй, матерый! Огонь, огонь!
From the war zone in Ukraine, showing Ukrainian troops using a UK-supplied NLAW or next generation light anti-tank weapon. You can see in the footage there is a Ukrainian soldier with a very large bazooka on his shoulder. He fires it and the warhead shoots out of his shoulder-launched cannon towards a target. It causes quite a significant sounding impact, and you can hear in the background the troops there or the people there seeming to react to this shoulder-launched weapon. This is a UK-supplied weapon, viewers. We have seen over the last few days the Ukrainian forces have been using a range of foreign weapons. We saw yesterday how Swedish weapons were also a part of the Ukraine compartment, and also American weapons, of course. And this is one of the first few visuals we have got, rare visuals, viewers, only on Republic, of a UK-supplied shoulder-launched next generation light anti-tank weapon. We have seen how over the last few days the Ukrainians have claimed quite a lot of success in destroying Russian invading vehicles. We have also, viewers, joining us Colonel S. Dinny, defense expert. Colonel Dinny, if you can hear us, what do you make of these visuals of Ukrainian troops using UK weapons to destroy Russian tanks?
We have been, getting reports to the tune of one of the reports which I was reading mentioned about 17,000 anti-tank, these kind of missiles were given to Ukraine in the last 6 days, and especially from UK. And of course, we also had reports saying that Germany also, setting aside their age-old policy, they have given anti-tank missiles and also Stinger missiles to Ukraine. So definitely, there is a push for shoulder-fired weapons, especially anti-tank and guided missiles, so that the armored column which is moving towards Kyiv and other built-up areas can be stopped, or not, if not stopped entirely, at least delayed. And that is the result what we are seeing today, being the 13th day. Still yet, the Russians have not been able to have a control of any city except for Kherson in south.
Right. That's Colonel Dinny there joining us on the supply of foreign weapons to Ukraine and how Ukrainian troops have used them fairly effectively over the last 13 days to stem what felt like initially the unavoidable Russian advance. We'll be tracking this and other visuals from the war zone very closely. We are reporting from there. Let's take a look at what else is happening in the Ukraine right now.
As Moscow continues its bid to break into Ukraine's capital, the people are stepping up humanitarian efforts in Kyiv. Ukrainians in the country's capital set up a field kitchen in the city to provide warm food for the army, hospitals and civilians. The scent drifts well beyond the checkpoint near the road as men and women stir soup and porridge in the field kitchen. It grew from a small tent to a large camp operated by dozens of volunteers who want to contribute in fighting Russians. A woman identified only as Oksana, whose husband is fighting in the Ukrainian army, said the kitchen duty gives her a way to avoid the latest developments. While soldiers are protecting their country on the front line, those who come back for a break can refill their stocks of cans at the field kitchen set up by civilians. Agency report for Republic TV.
Today is day 13th of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Our team of reporters are at the heart of the war in 5 countries. Let's take a quick look at our next report filed by my colleague Shavan Sen and Andre. They're reporting from a bomb attack site. Take a quick look. Well, in fact, in Khorasan, where we've been reporting from, what we have been highlighting is that how civilians have lost their lives. Right now, I've reached one household where these are heartbreaking stories. When the attack actually took place, as I was pointing out in my last broadcast, that civilians were staying in this very place. Now, I'll just try and show it to our viewers. This, what you see right now, is where children were actually staying. I'll also speak to the grandfather here, who's going to tell you that when the attack actually took place, there were 5 children who were inside this very bunker, and this entire place was caught on fire. As you can see right now, what's really happened is that this entire area, this entire room where children were actually staying, about 5 children were staying when the Russians carried out an aerial bombardment. This entire area has been completely destroyed, damaged, as you see, leading to large-scale destruction. In fact, I have with me my colleague Andre, who's going to speak to him and try and get you the story of what really happened when the bombing was carried out, how many losses took place. Andre, just you've spoken to him. Explain it to our viewers, what really happened, how is his family members right now?
So when the bombs had been here, the bomb dropped on the street, and the parts of this bomb carried on fire this building. And while the alarm, all of his grandchildren, 3 girls and 2 boys, were in the basement, in the shelter, and it when it was caught on fire, they had been there for 30 minutes before the firefighters came. Thanks to God, they all now alive. But it's terrible story.
Can you also ask him how many people were staying here when the bombing actually took place? Not just here, but the other places where the bombing took place.
Скільки людей ховалося взагалі, поки бомби, поки було бомбардування, взагалі?
5 онуків моїх.
А от крім них, не знаєте?
Мене вони тут не ховалися. Мене супруга, батько 94 роки, в хаті ми сиділи, а діти, 2 онука, 3 онучки ховались все рівно в убежищі. Я його робив, щоб в случаї всякого. Ну, благодаря, що зроблено воно по-людськи, по совісті, видержало, півчаса горіло, воно все, ми через 40 минут достали дітей тільки. 40 минут вони там дишали.
He tells that he doesn't know about the other people on the street, but he knows when the bombardment was, he, his wife and his old father was in the house, staying there, and he built this building especially for that cases like bombarding and other stuff. Because it was very good made, children were there for 40 minutes while the other building was on fire.
As you can see, this entire place, if I can just show you some parts of it, if you can see this entire place, it's a kind of a bunker that has been created. What you see right now is 2 beds that were basically made. As Andre was pointing out, this was essentially made because whenever there is an air raid alert or siren that is basically sounded off, people actually go inside bunkers like this. But this is certainly a well-made bunker. That is the reason why, despite the kind of aerial bombardment that actually took place, they were in a position to remain safe. This entire area has caught fire. As you can see, it's the charred remains of this house. There's absolutely nothing is left, but thankfully the children are safe is what we are being told. So that's the situation in places like this, where you're seeing how constantly people who have been... Take a look look at some of the images that we are also getting right outside the house where the bombing took place, and the charred remains of a car. This is what remains of a car right now, what you see, because the bombing took place just few meters away. That's the charred remain of a car. And on the other side, if I can also ask Rawatji just to take a look at this, also show you the impact of the aerial bombardment in this village. As you see, nothing remains right now, and this is exactly what we have been pointing out right from perhaps the very second day of the invasion, that the focus for the Russians right now is no longer the military bases. They are directly attacking civilians. It's not that that they would not have an idea where these aerial bombardments are taking place. They certainly have an idea of what's really happening, which are the areas that are being targeted. And as I was pointing out in my earlier broadcast, that these areas are being targeted simply because this is one of the crucial axes for the Russians, so that they can reach Kiev from the northern side. And that's what we are witnessing right now, that there's been large-scale destruction in these areas, and civilians have lost their lives. This is not just a battle between the army and, for that matter, rather both the armies. It's clearly becoming a battle between the people and the Russian army.
Viewers, we have a breaking advisory now. The Indian Embassy in Kiev has issued an advisory urging all stranded Indians to make use of the humanitarian corridor and evacuate using trains or vehicles or other means of transport. The advisory mentions that there is a 10-hour space right now for Indians to leave Ukraine, and it cites that the next humanitarian corridor under present circumstances is impossible to predict. We have the advisory with us, and the advisory has been issued by the Embassy of India in Kiev. It makes note of the fact that from 10 a.m. Moscow time, a humanitarian corridor has been opened, and the next one is unpredictable, and it asks for people to make use of that corridor and vacate right now. That is the breaking advisory we have coming in for all the Indians who are still in Ukraine. Viewers, this is a humanitarian corridor that has been opened. We have Colonel Binny also joining us. Colonel Binny, thank you for joining us. An advisory that says, Colonel Binny, advisory says that the next one is very unpredictable. We can't say when the humanitarian corridor will be opened again. How do you read this advisory asking all Indians to immediately vacate Ukraine?
I think we should see it in the light that, everybody is predicting a big assault on many of the cities, and especially in Kiev. And we all know that the Russian forces are right there on the outskirts of Kiev for past 2-3 days, and there has been a lot of resistance which they are facing. And now it is for them to make the final assault into Kiev, especially. So they are in the area of Bucha and Irpin. We all know there's a lot of fighting which is happening there on the outskirts. So that is why I think this humanitarian corridor, which is now there, the MEA wants that people to make best use of it, because once the fighting starts in the urban area, especially in Kiev and Kharkiv, where the maximum fighting is expected to happen, then it will become very difficult for people to move out of that area, and we just cannot predict what is the timeline for that, because once inside a city, the battle can go on for days. And in that scenario, it is very difficult for any evacuation to be planned.
Right. I thank Colonel Dinny for joining us. So the Indians in Kiev have been urged to use this humanitarian corridor and remove themselves from the war zone. This press release can be found on Republic World right now.
The Ukrainian city of Sumi is presently a high active war zone. A residential area was struck in the city by the Russian military. Nine people and 2 children were killed in the incident. Emergency response team arrived at the scene to douse the fire and retrieve the deceased from the rubble. A severely injured woman was also reportedly recovered. Warfare in the city has been the subject of recent talks between Prime Minister Modi and presidents of Russia and Ukraine. The fate of Indian students stuck in the city is a cause of deep concern for the Indian authorities. Agency report, Republic TV.
You are watching Republic TV, and coming up on the other side, we're getting latest reports from Ukraine. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy says he has lost interest in NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. And Ukraine claims an evacuation bus was attacked by Russian troops in Kiev.
बड़ी संख्या में लोग कीव की तरफ जा रहे हैं।
We have reached right at the ground zero. As you can see, no other global channel is at the spot.
टैंक की तस्वीर, ऐश्वर्या टैंक की तस्वीर।
What you see right now is the debris of this building when a projectile missile hit this building. Alexandra से हमने रिपोर्टिंग की, वहाँ पे हमने देखा कि रेजिडेंशियल इलाकों में ये शेलिंग हुई थी. This is the crater that has been created, the impact of the attack that took place.
पूरा का पूरा शहर खाली हो गया है। लाइव तस्वीर रिपब्लिक भारत पर एक्सक्लूसिव। टैंक के साथ साथ रिपब्लिक भारत की टीम आगे बढ़ रही है।
You see right now our fighter jets on the skies of Kiev, caught on Republic camera. Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago, where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage that has actually taken place. Right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing former military position of the Ukraine army. We can see a bridge over here that was destroyed, we're told by the locals, by Ukrainian forces. There's a siren alert that has taken place, I think, so we'll have to move out from here. We're getting inside the car right now. I'll ask my entire team to quickly come. This is not very far from Kiev. So this is the place where the bombings have taken place earlier in the day. Driver Sergey is going to take us away from this very place. We'll try and go to a place which is a little safer. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. What you see right now is the debris all around.
पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है।
And right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing a former military position of the Ukraine army. These are the latest images of a hospital which has been completely destroyed. Look at the damage that has been caused. What you see around me is large-scale destruction.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का, जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया, सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं। पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है। उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है। पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है। आप चारों तरफ जहां भी आपकी नजर जाएगी, वहां आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ तबाही नजर आएगी।
We have reached a hospital which has been completely destroyed. These are the latest images of
Welcome back, viewers. Over the last 13 days, you've seen how Republic has the largest presence on the ground in the war zone in Ukraine with Shavan Sen and his team. And we also have reporters like Shivani and Piyush in other adjoining countries that are relevant to this war. And also, very importantly, the war that is going on in Donbass between the Russian pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian forces being covered extensively. Here is an exclusive report from the Donbass area.
I'm Patrick Lancaster with a special report for Republic Media Network. And right behind me are some tents that are specially set up for the refugees that are now arriving from Mariupol. Now, right now, we are in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory. And these are set up by the local authorities here. And we just saw an ambulance leave, and that's because they were carrying a injured man that just came off one of the buses here. We've seen a couple of injuries so far. One child that had to be carried off, and a injured man that had a patch on his eye. We've got a lot more to come, but it seems like this ceasefire is finally starting to make some headway, and some people are leaving Mariupol and through their choice coming to this side, evacuating the somewhat Ukraine-controlled territory of Mariupol and evacuating to the Russian-controlled territory, DPR territory. So we're going to continue to show you exactly what's happening here on the ground. But the ceasefire seems to be taking hold today, so we're going to continue covering it and show you everything that's happening. Yes, this is Ukraine's biggest downfall as far as the locals here in Donetsk feel. And really common sense entitles. Russia and the local authorities here in Donetsk and Lugansk has been pushing on Ukraine to recognize these territories, or at least give them some sort of special recognition, maybe even still in Ukraine. But in 2014, when these locals made their borders, this is when the war started. This is when the original war and the invasion of these areas took place from Ukraine territory. The fact is, if Ukraine would have recognized these areas as somewhat independent and stopped the attacks on these areas, Ukraine would not be in the situation it is now. This is a fact. The people here have been begging for recognition because they didn't want to be part of Ukraine. In 2014, Ukraine started to take away languages, the Russian language, to be taught in schools and not be a second language, official language anymore. Because all the people in these areas are ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. Ukrainian is not spoken here. This is really like a different country.
You are watching Republic TV, and coming up on the other side, getting you, Ukraine President Zelenskyy says lost interest in NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. And Russian airstrikes target residential areas in Sumi. Ukraine claims 8 civilians killed.
Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago, where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage that has actually taken place.
Right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing former military position of the Ukraine army. We can see a bridge over here that was destroyed, we're told by the locals, by Ukrainian forces. there's a siren alert that has taken place right now, so we'll have to move out from here. We'll have to move out from here. We're getting inside the car right now. I'll ask my entire team to quickly come. This is not very far from Kiev. So this is the place where the bombings have taken place earlier in the day. Driver Sergey is going to take us away from this very place. We'll try and go to a place which is a little safer. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. What you see right now is the debris all around.
पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है।
And right behind me you can see this tractor that is demolishing a former military position of the Ukraine army.
These are the latest images of a hospital which has been completely destroyed. Look at the damage that has been caused. What you see around me is large-scale destruction.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया, सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं। पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है। उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है। पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है। आप चारों तरफ जहां भी आपकी नजर जाएगी वहां आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ तबाही नजर आएगी।
We have reached a hospital which has been completely destroyed. These are the latest images of the kind of destruction that has taken place after an aerial bombardment. Sukhois that were deployed from the airfields of Belarus, and then the aerial bombardment was carried out here in Zhitomir and then in Kyiv. On the other side is that very building. Look at the damage that has been caused here that we are right now. Around me is the result of that aerial bombardment that has taken place, starting from what happened in a school. Then we went to a maternity hospital. This is the third location where we have reached, and what you see around right now, I've reached one household. You see right now is where children were actually staying. That when the attack actually took place, there were 5 children who were inside this very bunker, and this entire place was caught on fire. As you can see right now, what's really happened is that this entire area, this entire room where children were actually staying, about 5 children were staying when the Russians carried out an aerial bombardment. This entire area has been completely destroyed.
समय मैं पहुंच गया हूँ कोरेस्टन में, और ये वो जगह है जहां पर देर रात धमाके हुए और कुछ देर पहले ही धमाकों से 3 शहर दहले थे। बर्फ का तूफान यहां पर आया हुआ है और मैं वो तस्वीर आपको दिखा रहा हूं जहां पर शेलिंग की वजह से कितना नुकसान हुआ है।
This is Republic World, and you're watching Republic TV.
Zelenskyy says he's ready to discuss on Russia's demands. Is Zelenskyy giving up and giving in to Russia now? Ukraine president says he's ready to discuss the status of Crimea with Russia. Zelenskyy says Ukraine's lost interest in NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. Evacuation of Indian students begins in Sumi. First batch of Indian students is evacuated. India issues an urgent advisory for students in Kyiv, urges students to use the 10-hour humanitarian corridor. And viewers, Republic is the only channel reporting from Khorasan bombing sites just a few kilometers away from the now defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant. Breaking news that's coming in, we're going to now show you a video, the video that has now come to us from Zhitomir, showing the aftermath of Russian shelling. These are consequences of the Russian shelling in Zhitomir, and Russian shelling continues there as we are speaking. Remember, we are covering 10 Ukraine cities, one of them, and this video shows Zhitomir showing the aftermath of Russian shelling. There is devastation and there is indiscriminate shelling that took place on day 13 of the Russian invasion. And even as today NATO is giving out a briefing, Canadian Prime Minister seems to say, I'm uniting with Ukraine. The fact of the matter is they continue to be asking for help from the global Western community. And these pictures show what's happening at this place at Zhitomir, where there is indiscriminate shelling. You can see blood on the streets. Let me also, as I'm speaking and we stay with those visuals, go across to the guest, Major General K.K. Sinha, who's joining us now. Major General K.K. Sinha, I have two questions. One, what is NATO really planning to do when they give out veiled threats in a press briefing that we have so many troops ready? And secondly, it seems the West has abandoned Ukraine.
Look, there are two things which is being played at, when you say geopolitical and geostrategic level. See, what is NATO getting exposed, and this has been done after the invasion of Ukraine. First they were saying that they put boots on ground, which they have not. They refused to intervene. UK was saying that they are going to intervene. They have not done it. So this has proven now that NATO is not interfering, not getting inside. Now, what NATO is now doing, what we can gather, NATO is doing exercises in all the seas. NATO is trying to do it, on the air, which has come. Basically, those 30 countries and those countries which is, nearing that, barring, of course, America and Canada, which is a totally different continent. But when we talk about the eastern, part of Europe, so where it is there, they are exercising some form of, NATO troop presence by doing exercises. But that is not enough. These type of things are very, very fine. What NATO is trying to do, two things. NATO is trying to do, Zelenskyy is trying that NATO should, get committed. First, he was trying the boots on ground. Then he was saying, air passage. He was saying no flying zone to declare it. That is also the Russia said. It is actually if they do it, any country does it, that becomes the getting into the war directly with the Russia. So they have not done it. Now, third, he is trying, which happened in the First World War or even in the Second World War, that the NATO gets committed, like Allied got committed slowly. So that is, that is a fantasy. In today, challenges are there.
Yes.
It will not happen
In
that
fact,
way.
Major General K.K. Sinha, as we stay with that sentiment to try and understand what's happening, viewers, we're going to go into a report. But let me also tell you, in the next 10 minutes from Republic, we shall be 30 kilometers from the Belarus border, where our reporters, our colleagues will be reporting from. We're going to show you another bombing location. This is called Ovruch in northern location that we're going to show you. But that's in the next 10 minutes. First up, take a look at this report.
Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, has been marked with heavy shelling by Russia. And civilians have been bearing the brunt of the crossfire between Russian and Ukrainian forces. In the city of 1.4 million people, emergency treatment hospital has been inundated with patients injured in missile attacks, explosions and shrapnel, with more constantly arriving. Dmitry Sodorenko, who was in the hospital with his wife and daughter, said a missile hit his 5-story residential building, causing the floor underneath his feet to collapse. Earlier, a maternity ward was shifted to a bomb shelter for safety as Russian offensive continues for the 13th day. Agency report for Republic TV.
Viewers, Republic is the only channel that is getting you updates from 5 nations and has travelled in 10 cities in Ukraine. My colleague Shavan Sen and Andrei had been last reported and had given us a report from Korostin. It's a city that was bombed and it's extremely close to the now defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant. Take a look at this report.
Republic has now reached yet another location in Korostin, which was bombed about 2 days ago. And take a look at this. We have now finally reached the very place where the bombing took place 2 days ago, and Korostin is in the northern Ukrainian region, which is not very far from Chernobyl. Remember the nuclear plant that came under attack of the Russians? That was about a few days ago. And take a look at the kind of destruction that has taken place here in Korostin. That roughly about 10 such places, 10 villages that have been attacked in this particular region where aerial bombardment took place. What I'm showing you right now are images of what remains in this village, where right now, even as we speak, I'm told that the rescue operation is still on some of the places, trying to clear the debris, as you see on your screens right now. These are the images, latest images of the bombing that took place about. But this very area that we are reporting from, this area has come under target of the Russians simply because of 2 reasons. One, this basically comes under their northern axis. While I'm speaking, I'll try and show you all the visuals. There's heavy snowstorm right now here in this northern part of Ukraine, and this certainly affects whatever little operations that they are basically carrying out behind me, try to remove the debris so that this area can be cleared, the movement. Because remember, this village, as you go by, it connects to the main highway. It connects to the main highway and it goes straight towards Kiev. That's why this is a strategic location. There are 2 parts to it. One, certainly, let me stay with the visuals that has been caused here. Take a look at it. It's a little difficult to walk through here simply because of 2 reasons. One, there has been heavy snow, and secondly, this area is completely, the tracks are muddy tracks, so it becomes a little difficult to go. And take a look at the crater that has been created because of the bombing. This is the crater that has been created, what you see, and those are the houses that have been damaged in this area of Korostin. Now Korostin becomes very important, as I was pointing out. Roughly about 150 is the upper limit I'm talking about. 150 kilometers as far as from the nuclear plant. And not to forget how the nuclear plant that came under attack. Over the last 48 hours, what we have done is that we've gone to almost all locations which are extremely strategically very important for the Russians right now. Because if you look at it, while many would tell you that there are multiple accesses that have been opened by the Russian troops, but one of the main areas, or one of the main access, is from where we are standing. It's the Zhitomir and this Korostin area, from where you have the Russian troops advancement taking place. So these bombings that have majorly taken place is in the night. In Zhitomir, some of these bombings that took place was in the morning, and this route is essentially the route that is taken by the Russian troops to go a little closer. So you have some parts, Cherniv being one of the areas which have been completely taken over by the Russians. So the northern part, if you look at it, the northern part moving towards Kiev is the very place which has now been taken over by the Russians. They've been able to take control of those very areas. It's only towards the south that you look at the Ukrainians have had some hold. Not very far from where we are is the very city that has been taken control by the Russian troops. This place is still under the control of the Ukrainians at this point in time. But that is the reason why those areas which still the Ukrainians have control over, those are the places where the bombings are essentially taking place. My colleague Mridul is also at another spot where the bombing actually took place. I'll just turn over the camera. Keep showing you some of the visuals. It's certainly very difficult to navigate in this very area. As you can see, the impact of the bombing that actually took place. What you see right now on your screens is a village where people were actually staying when the bombing took place, and this was at the night when the bombing took place. So that is the reason why there have been casualties here. If the first numbers that we have got from the local administration is roughly about 9 casualties is what we have been told, which also includes women and children. And as you see, similar images that we got you about 24 hours ago was from another area.
Ukraine and Russia, both sides of the conflict, have started publishing videos of the ongoing war. Russian Defense Ministry has released a video which shows the destruction of anti-aircraft gun and armored vehicle by Ka-52 attack helicopters. In counter, Ukraine military has also published a video of anti-tank complex Stugna P destroying Russian military tanks. It has been 13 days the two countries are fighting. Third round of peace talks chaired, but positive results yielded. Agency report for Republic TV.
There's also breaking news that's coming in that it's the Russian Emergency Ministry, viewers, that has delivered 430 tons of humanitarian aid to the residents of war-ridden Donbass and Ukraine. This aid also includes food, essentials, cloth and household chemicals. Let me go across to our guest who's joining us, Major General K.K. Sinha, defense expert. Major General K.K. Sinha, as reports of the 13th day of the Russian invasion continue, we see how West continues to have abandoned Ukraine almost. We see NATO making the right noises and giving out veiled threats that they have the right troops with them to ensure that they can react back. Where is this going? Is this going the nuclear way? Do you think there's going to be negotiations and this is going to stop? Or is the entire world going to be engulfed in this?
Rhythm, your questions are very pertinent where it is going. As of today, it is going in a Russian's way because Russians has got, geostrategic aim, geopolitical aim, and their military aim. What we are actually getting report is the military aim. The military aims are two, which they have already laid down to the world. One is demilitarization and denazification. I will try to quote, decode for you. Demilitarization means what they are saying, that any military effort which they have created after 2014 with the help of the NATO, with the help of the West, they are going to destroy it whatsoever. They're able to do it. They have able to achieve it. Their idea is nowhere to capture. The capture was of Donbass. Donbass region in both the republic that came into being in 2014. It is not there. If you read the Minsk II Accord, I think in the point 12 has got they're already there. It is LPR and DPR is there, which has been signed. Now what they are saying, but 30% of the area was only with them. 71% was with the Ukrainian. They are saying Ukrainian forces were there. It is a trench warfare, and they are able to, totally liberate these two. And they have used the UN Charter 7, the way we invaded in Bangladesh. That is the time they have taken that, because these two liberated areas, they have been declared as a republic, and in the invite of them they have gone for the peacekeeping. And this is the way the diplomacy works over there. But hard fact is there, both the area of Donbass is more or less under control. And when you're saying now the humanitarian angle they are supplying, because these are Russian people, basically Russian, they are issuing passport. So that is going very well. You see, I have been reading this, and I have got a view that minimum, if the Russians have to achieve all aid,
in fact,
it will take to 20
Major
days.
General K.K. Sinha, the larger point you're making is some people need to start taking responsibility, and that's what we'll do. Viewers, we'll go into a quick report that's coming in, and in the next 10 minutes, Republic Live from 30 kilometers from the Belarus border, where our colleagues Shavan and Andre join us. First up, that report.
If you can see this entire place, it's a kind of a bunker that has been created. What you see right now is two beds that were basically made. This was essentially made because whenever there is an air raid alert or siren that is basically sounded off, people actually go inside bunkers like this. But this is certainly a well-made bunker. That is the reason why, despite the kind of aerial bombardment that actually took place, they were in a position to remain safe.
Frustrated and slowed down, and they really haven't made any noteworthy progress in the last few days, with the exception of down south. In the south, they continue to have some progress, but up in the north and northeast, what we assess is as they continue to get frustrated, they continue to rely now more on what we would call long-range fires. So this is bombardment, missile strikes, long-range artillery into city centers that they aren't in yet, at least not on the ground in any significant number. So we're seeing that, and of course that has been leading to, and as you would expect it would, when you're relying more on long-range fires, you're gonna cause more damage, and you're gonna kill more people and injure more people. And so that's what we think is happening. That's what we're seeing in the north. We do not see them have any control over Kyiv, Kharkiv. There's still a lot of
shocking visuals coming in right now from Kharkiv, where a BMP-2 tank gunned down a civilian car that was passing by. Shocking visuals on your screens from war in Ukraine, wherein a BMP-2 tank can be seen launching an attack on a civilian car, a Ukrainian car there in Kharkiv. The horrific images from the war-torn region of a tank launching a defensive. Rhythm, we're getting visuals here of an unprecedented attack here on a civilian car by the BMP-2 tank.
And if we actually continue to stay with the visual, it's horrifying, because this is a large tank that has just destroyed a car. This is a civilian car that was going on its way, and these visuals truly the story of the war that's going on the 13th day at the Russian invasion. These are visuals coming in where this tanker that Crispino is talking about, the BMP-2 tank, had launched an attack on a civilian car in Kharkiv. And this is it's horrifying to say the least, because the car has been smashed, destroyed, the people inside have been killed, and it was just going on its way. And this comes when we're being told that civilians are not going to be targeted. The person inside the car, two people inside the car killed, as an offensive is launched by the Russian tanks that were going in Kharkiv. And this truly is the story of this war. It is the civilians who are bearing the brunt. with an exodus, a large exodus taking place in Ukraine, and how tanks are now smashing and launching offensives on cars. We just stay with that because the moment it started and Crispino started talking, we saw how the tanks, without any sort of violation, without any sort of intimidation from the civilian car that was going on its way, hit out and launched an offensive in Kharkiv. And the Russian BMP-2 tanks launched this offensive. In a matter of 5 seconds, the car is smashed. Horrifying visuals, Crispino, coming from there.
As Moscow continues its bid to break into Ukraine's capital, the people are stepping up humanitarian efforts in Kyiv. Ukrainians in the country's capital set up a field kitchen in the city to provide warm food for the army, hospitals and civilians. The scent drifts well beyond the checkpoint near the road as men and women stir soup and porridge in the field kitchen. It grew from a small tent to a large camp operated by dozens of volunteers who want to contribute in fighting Russians. A woman identified only as Oksana, whose husband is fighting in the Ukrainian army, said the kitchen duty gives her a way to avoid the latest developments. While soldiers are protecting their country on the front line, those who come back for a break can refill their stocks of cans at the field kitchen set up by civilians. Agency report for Republic TV.
This place where we are, there is no military base. There is no military infrastructure of the Ukrainian army. But despite that, look at what is really happening. This perhaps would have been the living room of someone, which has been completely destroyed. There you have the kitchen on the other side. That's also been completely destroyed. While the Russians are trying to clear these areas to ensure that this entire area is empty and the movement becomes far more easier.
The following clip, viewers, now shows a school that is shot at in Sumi. Bullet holes can be seen peeking through the walls of the building. Bullet holes are even seen affecting the utensils inside the building. Piles of debris next to defaced vehicles recorded at night are the scenes of a private residential sector in Sumi. This clip, viewers, shows heavy blocks of houses that stood once lying on the ground in a littered heap. Bombs are dropped on Sumi, reportedly by Russian planes, fell on a residential neighborhood and damaged houses. People reportedly killed by the attack are still under the debris. Some of the victims are assumed to be children. The following clip shows Ukrainian Bayraktar drones attacking one of the vehicles on the 63-meter-long convoy that had come to a halt near the outskirts of Kyiv. And coming up after a short break, viewers, we get you how Ukraine's President Zelenskyy has lost interest in the NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. And India issues an advisory for students in Kyiv, urges students to use the 10-hour humanitarian corridor. Much more after a short break. Stay on with us.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया, सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं। पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है। उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है। पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है। आप चारों तरफ जहां भी आपकी नजर जाएगी वहां आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ तबाही नजर आएगी।
We have reached a hospital which has been completely destroyed. These are the latest images of the kind of destruction that has taken place after an aerial bombardment. Sukhois that were deployed from the airfields of Belarus, and then the aerial bombardment was carried out here in Zhitomir and then in Kyiv. On the other side is that very building. Look at the damage that has been caused here that we are right now. Around me is the result of that aerial bombardment that has taken place, starting from what happened in a school. Then we went to a maternity hospital. This is the third location where we have reached, and what you see around me is large-scale destruction.
I'm Patrick Lancaster, and this is a special report for Republic Media Network. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years, but DPR forces and Russian forces have captured this position and area that were in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory.
बड़ी संख्या में लोग कीव की तरफ जा रहे हैं.
We have reached right at the ground zero. As you can see, no other global channel is at the spot.
टैंक की तस्वीर, ऐश्वर्या टैंक की तस्वीर.
What you see right now is the debris of this building when a projectile missile hit this building. Alexandra से हमने रिपोर्टिंग की. वहाँ पे हमने देखा कि रेजिडेंशियल इलाकों में ये शेलिंग हुई थी. This is the crater that has been created. The impact of the attack that took place.
पूरा का पूरा शहर खाली हो गया है. लाइव तस्वीर रिपब्लिक भारत पर एक्सक्लूसिव. टैंक के साथ साथ रिपब्लिक भारत की टीम आगे बढ़ रही है.
You see right now our fighter jets on the skies of Kiev caught on Republic cameras. Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago, where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage that has actually taken place. Right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing former military position of the Ukraine army. We can see a bridge over here that was destroyed, we're told by the locals, by Ukrainian forces. There's a siren alert that has taken place right here, so we'll have to move out from here. We'll have to move out from here. We're getting inside the car right now. I'll ask my entire team to quickly come. This is not very far from Kiev. So this is the place where the bombings have taken place earlier in the day. Driver Sergey is going to take us away from this very place. We'll try and go to a place which is a little safer.
Zelenskyy says he's ready to discuss on Russia's demands. Is Zelenskyy giving up to Russia now? Ukraine president says he's ready to discuss the status of Crimea with Russia. Ukraine president says lost interest in NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. Evacuation of Indian citizens begins in Sumi. First batch of Indian students evacuated.
India issues urgent advisory for students in Kiev, urges students to use 10-hour humanitarian corridor. Republic, the only channel reporting from Khorasan bombing sites just a few kilometers away from Chernobyl nuclear plant. And once again, putting out this video that has emerged from war-torn Ukraine, which is claimed to be of Russian S-300 air defense systems, which was neutralized in Oleshki town in Kharkiv region. So Ukraine once again claiming that the S-300 missile system has taken a hit. So it is the Ukrainian forces that have taken down a Russian missile system. Reports suggesting that this is from the Kharkiv region. Kharkiv, remember, is a region that has already been taken over by Russian troops. Let me quickly go across to General Sinha, who continues to be with us on this broadcast. General Sinha, what do you make of the Russian tactics at this point in time? What we are being told is they're trying to close in on Kiev, and the strategy is simply to target cities surrounding Kiev, big cities surrounding Kiev, so that they take control over that and then can perhaps start closing in on Kiev thereafter.
See, what I can read and decode the Russians strategy. Russian strategy is very simple. They are not neither surrounding, they're neither getting inside the Kiev. This is the thing, and Zelenskyy is also now started yielding. See, the point is like that. If they have got two military aims before Kiev, two huge areas which were the military base, and both are with them. See, Irpin is also where the Stinger missiles are being assembled. So they are bombarding. So everyone, keeps sitting over there. They will, and you take it from me, this is my reading. They will never. Why? They will go there to kill civilians. They are giving the, green corridor. So Americans, and the NATO, who is trying, to do something desperation, can create this 24 hours, 72 hours, Russia failed. Russia is going before its, the time frame which it laid down for it. And they have given clearly, see, the three exercises, which they do it not on sand model. They have done it on ground. And I've been saying that, and I have read those very well and carried out research. It was 24 days, 28 days, and 32 days. Russia, and my judgments are there, because the NATO has not intervened. They will be able to do it on 15 to 20 days time. It has got geopolitical aim. Why? Zelenskyy says, okay, this time being, hold on, we will not join NATO. NATO is not sending boots on ground. NATO is not flying zone. And Zelenskyy is just because the Americans are saying, and he has got huge money, in the offshore area. That's why this money can take you. And what he's doing, the reports are not coming. My reports, which I get it, is there that people are asking question. Why you put the martial law? Why you're not giving up? Why you're not resigning? See, these things, and let it happen, because Russia is not in hurry, which everyone's trying to put across. West is trying to put across.
Yes.
See,
what they seem to be doing is, General Sinha, they seem to be regrouping to attack Kiev. Cities like Irpin, cities like Bucha seem to have become the fulcrum on which rests the siege of Kiev. So let's see if that is the strategy that is in the next day or so adopted by Russian forces on ground. But thank you for sharing that perspective.
These are breaking visuals coming in, and the Ministry of External Affairs has said that it is happy to inform that they've been able to take all the Indian students out of Sumi. So these visuals are of the Indian students who were trapped in the city of Sumi, which was very badly hit by Russia's invasion, but the MEA has managed to extricate all the Indian students out of there. They are currently en route to Poltava, which is another city in Ukraine, from where they will board trains to western Ukraine, and then flights under Operation Ganga are being prepared to bring them home. So this is good news that we can bring to you, which is that the Indian students who were trapped in Sumi have been extricated from the city after a tremendous amount of work and effort by the Indian authorities, owing to the humanitarian corridor that has been established. And now we can see that some of them are there. They're enjoying, I presume, a cup of tea over there, having been removed from the war zone, a very dangerous situation in Sumi. We have Niranjan joining us also. Niranjan, these visuals of Indians being extricated from Sumi, what do they imply to you?
Let me tell you that India's most watched news channel, with a 10-member reporting team inside the war zone, the Republic Media Network has so far covered 14 cities in the last 2 weeks. The first crew to reach Kiev, we were there hours after the Russian missiles had struck apartments, even before global channels could reach there. At the Hoptivka-Belgorod border, our cameras captured the exodus as people were evacuated. At Luhansk, Shastya, the separatist-dominated region that has seen a bulk of the fighting, we were there in the last 2 weeks. Kharkiv, one of the worst hit cities, Republic was the first channel in this city. In Poltava, we captured the movement of tanks and artillery as the fighting intensified. And now you're looking at pictures from Sumi. We were the first Indian channel in Sumi, way ahead of the rest. And we then returned to Kiev to capture the second wave of the attacks and the threat. We moved to Lviv. We brought you reports of the mass refugee crisis post the war. Ivano-Frankivsk, one of the first cities to be bombed. Republic TV was live from there when no Indian channel had reached the city. Our crews have passed through Rivne that has woken up to sounds of sirens almost every day. First Indian channel in Zhitomir, Shavan, Andrei, Mridul, Rawat reporting where Russian jet bombed even schools and a hospital, according to Ukraine authorities. Khmelnytsky has also been covered in the last 2 weeks since we got there. Vinnytsia, on Sunday we brought you the devastation from Vinnytsia. We are live today in Korosten, which is very close to Chernobyl. It's in the Chernobyl range. It's now been captured by Russia. That is Chernobyl, captured by Russia. 14 cities so far as we bring you unmatched global coverage. Back to you.
Right now, I've reached one household. You see right now is where children were actually staying. That when the attack actually took place, there were 5 children who were inside this very bunker, and this entire place was caught on fire. As you can see right now, what's really happened is that this entire area, this entire room where children were actually staying, about 5 children were staying when the Russians carried out an aerial bombardment. This entire area has been completely destroyed.
Well, ours has been the largest war reporting team from across the war zone in Ukraine. We've been covering the devastation on ground in Ukraine. We've been telling you the NATO's perspective as well. So we've been following that particular angle very, very closely. We've also been reporting non-stop from the separatist-backed region of Donetsk and Luhansk. This particular report filed by Patrick, our colleague who's been getting us non-stop ground reports from Donetsk. Take a look.
I'm Patrick Lancaster with a special report for Republic Media Network. And right behind me are some tents that are specially set up for the refugees that are now arriving from Mariupol. Now, right now, we are in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory. And these are set up by the local authorities here. And we just saw an ambulance leave, and that's because they were carrying a injured man that just came off one of the buses here. We've seen a couple of injuries so far, one child that had to be carried off, and a injured man that had a patch on his eye. We've got a lot more to come, but it seems like this ceasefire is finally starting to make some headway, and some people are leaving Mariupol, and through their choice, coming to this side, evacuating the somewhat Ukraine-controlled territory of Mariupol and evacuating to the Russian-controlled territory, DPR territory. So we're going to continue to show you exactly what's happening here on the ground. But the ceasefire seems to be taking hold today, so we're going to continue covering it and show you everything that's happening. Yes, this is Ukraine's biggest downfall as far as the locals here in Donetsk feel. And really common sense entitles. Russia and the local authorities here in Donetsk and Lugansk has been pushing on Ukraine to recognize these territories, or at least give them some sort of special recognition, maybe even still in Ukraine. But in 2014, when these locals made their borders, this is when the war started. This is when the original war and the invasion of these areas took place from Ukraine territory. The fact is, if Ukraine would have recognized these areas as somewhat independent and stopped the attacks on these areas, Ukraine would not be in the situation it is now. This is a fact. The people here have been begging for recognition because they didn't want to be part of Ukraine. In 2014, Ukraine started to take away languages, the Russian language, to be taught in schools and not be a second language, official language anymore, because all the people in these areas are ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. Ukrainian is not spoken here. This is really like a different country. Well, right behind me, we have Lenin Square. That's the statue of Lenin right there. And as you can see, there's a few people, a few cars, but this is nothing like the normal life of this city. It almost seems like sometimes there's more journalists in the streets than there is people. But people are still living, and you have to keep in mind that the females, children, and elderly, there was a mass evacuation ordered by the leader of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, and this started weeks ago, before the actual invasion started, because these people have been living under war for 8 years. That's what a lot of people in the West don't understand, is that there's been a war going on here for almost 8 years now. May 26, 2014 is when the war started in this city, Donetsk. It didn't just start 12 days ago. It started 8 years ago. So these people have been living under this, and this city has come under intense shelling from Ukrainian territory. And in fact, in 2014, this area, I was here, had a referendum to break away from Ukraine, as did the Northern Republic, Lugansk People's Republic. This morning is the first morning without audible shelling. As we can see, there's people, some people walking on the streets. There's still some vehicles, and people are still trying to live. Some of these people are almost numb over these last 8 years of war. Of course, people in the eastern or in the western part of Ukraine, this war is something that's new to them. But unfortunately, these locals here in Donetsk are war hardened.
Global debate on how far will Putin go. Zelenskyy hints at recognizing Crimea. 13 days of war, 3 rounds of talks. What next? Global debate on Russia's options. Unmissable global debate at 9 p.m.
"30 kilometers away from Belarus, Republic Media Network has reached another bombing site. What you see behind me is a house that was completely demolished in an aerial bombardment. In fact, a 500-kilogram bomb was dropped by the Russians around 2:30 in the morning. About 30 households in this area called Ozurk has been completely demolished. What you see is the remains of this very household. In fact, on the other side, if I can just show you how the damage has actually taken place. In fact, this place where we are broadcasting right now from is not very far from Belarus. It's just about 30 kilometers. So it's pretty much the border of Ukraine and Belarus, and see the kind of damage that has taken place. And just a short while ago, a breaking news also coming in, how the general staff of the armed forces here in Ukraine has now confirmed that Belarus is already participating in the war. In fact, they have allied with the Russians. The Russians are now using their territory as full scale for the full scale war that is taking place. Let me just quickly take you through some of the images that we are getting you every hour. In fact, we are the only network. We have covered over 15 such locations. We have now come right to the tip of the northern border of Ukraine, the very axis that has become extremely crucial for the Russian armed forces. In fact, this is the very axis that we are being told has been taken by the Russian army. That is the reason why this is the kind of destruction that you are essentially seeing. It is late at night when the kind of bombing actually has been taking place. Around 2:30 in the morning, we have been told that the Russian army has dropped about 500 kilogram of bomb. And look at the kind of destruction that has taken place in the entire area. If you take a look at the other side of the building, what you see right now is the impact of the bombing, where houses have been completely damaged, window panes have been broken. These are the very places where people have still been living. But what you see is that large-scale destruction and also the civilian losses that have lives that have been lost in this kind of aerial bombardment that's been taking place. What's important to point out here is that 3 airfields, which are not very far, 3 airfields in Belarus, which have become very, very active. Important to state here is that you have the state-of-art equipments that are being used by the Russian army, and the factor is that continuously over the last 2 to 3 days, we are seeing that the northern Ukrainian part, as I go a little closer and show you the kind of damage that has taken place, the craters that have been created. Take a look at this area. There was a house here which is now been, what you see right now, this very area was the place where a house was there. That area, there was a house which now, as you can see, it's all in dust. That's all that remains of this particular house. I'm sorry I'm not being able to also communicate better because one, it's been very difficult for us also to move from one location to the other to get you these kind of reports, and also the fact that it's also been very overwhelming to see these kind of images continuously over the last 13 days. And time and again what we are seeing is that civilian houses have been targeted by the Russian army. What I'll try and do is, let me try and go across to the other side. I'll ask Rawatji also to come along with me and try and show you, give you images a little closer so that you understand what's really happened. So it's not just the front side. Take a look at this. Take a look at what has happened. These are not small houses that have been targeted. These are places where you would have a lot more number of people who have been living here. And as you see, one after the other, scores of houses in one row have completely been damaged. As you see here, as I go a little closer and try and show you the kind of bombardment that has taken place, resulting in this kind of damage. Here, as I go a little closer to show you what remains of this particular house. As you see, this area is a little blocked. We'll try and see if we can go here and get you those images. Now these JCB machines have been brought in so that the debris can be cleared. And we have seen that the authorities here, they're trying to work 24/7 to ensure that these areas are not really blocked, because important to highlight here is that these areas have multiple checkpoints that have been installed by the Ukrainian army, so that the movement of the Russian troops can certainly be slowed down. Take a look at that house on the other side. That house has also been damaged. So every area that we have been going to, today itself, this is the second location where we have reached. And let me just tell our viewers a little bit, while Rawatji stays with those visuals, I'll ask him to stay with the visuals as I take you through some details that we are picking up in terms of what exactly is the Ukrainian army saying with regards to the nature of the bombardments that have taken place, and which are the battlefields that have been activated by the Russian Federation, because we are being told that Belarus is playing a very critical role at this point in time. In fact, they are saying that there are signs of readiness of the military political leadership of the Republic of Belarus for possible large-scale participation of the armed forces of the Republic of Belarus in hostilities against Ukraine on the side of the Russian Federation. So all of this is right now possible because, remember, the proximity of these areas to Belarus, and the fact of the matter is that they are now being activated to this particular extent. And some details that they have given of the areas, the border checkpoints, we are being told there is a place called Oleksandrivka. Now, Oleksandrivka is a place in Belarus, not very far from where we are broadcasting right now, where they have brought in the BTGs, the battle tactical groups have been brought in, and those battle tactical groups are playing a crucial role in this battle, because it was all this while what we were witnessing was the BTGs were limited to a particular location in and around Kiev, but now the BTGs have been taken into Belarus. And why it is very important, these two BTGs in 38 units of BTGs that have been brought by the Russian army on the Belarus border indicates that they are upping the ante, and their focus right now remains these very areas where civilian areas are constantly being targeted by the Russian army. And if Belarus gives that kind of support that is needed, then of course the damage, the destruction is only going to increase. Remember, on the one hand, we are looking at how the pressure is also being built on Russia. Many would say that we are talking about the economic sanctions, but how has it really helped the Ukrainians at this stage? Because on the one hand, you've seen the frustration that has been shown by the president of Ukraine when it comes to NATO. They've already not got the kind of, they haven't really got the kind of support that they had expected from NATO in terms of the no-fly out zone. And if that would have happened, then perhaps things would have been a little different than what it is right now. Because when you have an open sky and the fact that your air defense system isn't that strong, then perhaps avoiding these kind of damage becomes even more difficult. And that's where the Ukrainians are finding it very, very difficult. Russia, of course, is also bleeding along with Ukraine. But that's on a different note. That is affecting certainly the Russian oligarchs. It is affecting the economy of Russia when you have global brands withdrawing from Russia. But what you see right now is that there is no immediate relief as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, because it's the civilians who are being targeted time and again. And as I have been pointing out, that the significance of the area from where we are reporting. Now, as the information that we've had, this area, for all our viewers to understand, if you take a look at the map of Ukraine, this is right at the tip of Ukraine and Belarus border. We are just about 30 kilometers, so we are extremely close to the very place where the mobilization of the Russian troops have taken place. You have the battalion tactical groups, about 38 such units of the battalion tactical groups that have been mobilized just at the border of Belarus. And not to forget, the Russian Federation has also activated their air force way more than what they had in the first few days of the invasion. So that is the reason why perhaps you are seeing these areas just close to the Belarus border. These areas are being constantly attacked. Just about an hour ago, we had sent in a report from Korostin. Now, Korostin is again on the same very axis that we have been talking about, the northern axis. And just to understand, as you basically take that particular highway, the Zhitomir highway, you are closing into Kiev. So for the ground forces of the Russian Federation to enter, they essentially need a far more easier route or a clean route so that they can reach Kiev and the offensive can be increased, which would essentially mean that if there is a regrouping, if there is a mobilization that they require, if that takes place, then it's going to be difficult for the Ukrainians to be able to hold fort, especially in Kiev region itself, while there has been a large-scale battle that's taking place. But what's happening in the process is that while all of this is taking place, a lot of appeals that have been made by the Ukrainians is that at least civilian areas shouldn't be targeted. You've had the Ukrainian president talking about the fact that how, because no action has been taken by the West, no action has really been taken by the NATO, that's the reason why you are looking at civilian areas closer to the borders being attacked time and again. Take a look at the kind of damage that's taken place. A car that's topsy-turvy at this point. There is a house here which has been down to rubble. Take a look at this. A large house perhaps, and this is all that remains. Just half part of the house that remains right now. And in this area, a total of 30 households is what we've been told have been attacked. And the local administration with whom we just spoke to before we began our broadcast, they are telling us that this is the entire weight is about 500 kilograms. Here the gentleman is showing us, this is what you see. This is just a part of the bomb that was dropped. Take a look at this. Just like the same images that we showed you in Zhitomir, this is the same issue. A heavy part of the bomb that has now been taken and has been collected by the district authorities. They would be taking it and collecting it because they're saying that this is part of the evidence that they gather. If there is any sort of denial that has been made by the Russian Federation on a global front, because remember, for them it would become important that they are able to establish that this is from the Russian side, because if you go by the counter claim that has been made by the Russians have been saying that they haven't carried out any of these attacks or these strikes from their side. In fact, they're blaming it on the Ukrainian air defense system, saying that their own missiles have struck some of the villages in some parts of Ukraine. Now that's largely the claim that has been made by the Russian side. So that's the reason why whenever we are going to such sites, what we are witnessing is the fact that they're collecting these parts of the bomb. They're collecting these parts of the bomb and keeping it with the district administration in most of the places that we have actually gone to. And only to try and build a proper case that these attacks are primarily being carried out by none other than the Russians. Just staying with these images, because these are very powerful images that will actually tell you the reality of the war between Ukraine and Russia. For all those, when this war actually began, with the kind of a statement that was made by the Russian president about the fact that this was an attempt that was made by the Russian to try and free the people of Ukraine from a Nazi regime, from the cabal of drug addicts, and the fact that he was trying to free the people of Ukraine from a torturous regime, and that these are military operations that are going to be limited only to the eastern side, or rather the Donbass region. But today, where we are standing on the northern side of Ukraine and closer to Belarus, as I was pointing out, 30 kilometers from Belarus. And what you're seeing just behind me are images of destruction that was caused because of the aerial bombardment. And as I have been saying, while we've not really seen the kind of focus that should be, especially when you have an army carrying out large-scale destruction or attacks, pinpoint attacks on civilian areas, there has to be some sort of a global clamor that will peace be given a chance. At this stage, doesn't really look like that peace would be given the chance that it should be. And more importantly, both sides have had their own fixed positions. Ukraine, on the one side, they said that they are willing to have direct negotiations with Russia. Russia says that they are also willing to have that kind of negotiation. But yes, they've said that there would be some conditions. And those conditions are pertaining to one, a change in the constitution of Ukraine that is going to give the assurance to Russia that Ukraine is not going to be siding with any sort of bloc, which was basically an indication about the NATO membership. Then you have about the recognition of Crimea. You have the recognition of the separatist regions on the eastern side of Ukraine, of Donetsk and Lugansk. But these are conditions which the Ukrainians have said no to. But what's the way out? Every day that we are trying to document the kind of destruction with the sole purpose that the world needs to wake up and see what's really happening here in Ukraine, where civilians are losing their lives. And as I have been pointing out, while we do not have the exact data of the number of casualties that have been caused because of these aerial bombardments, but the fact of the matter is that from these kind of destruction, it is quite evident that a large number of people may have lost their lives. At least if you take a look at it, the local administration in this area suggesting that about 30 households have been destroyed. And look at people still standing here taking whatever is not been damaged because of the bombardment. They're trying to take that, collect it, and perhaps leave from the area. These are similar images that we have been seeing over the last few days. And as I said, with this location, this is the 16th such location that we have come to where the bombing has actually taken place. And this doesn't seem to be nearing any end at this point in time. Well, in fact, let me try and do something and just go a little closer to the crater that has been created. Well, I think so. This must have been covered from the time that the rescue operation or the operations that have been carried out by the district authorities to try and level this area, so that the movement in this area becomes a little easier. Because these households, if I can tell you, they are just on the road itself. So for any kind of army movement also to take place, it is essential that the area is basically cleared off. And as I've been pointing out, the significance of this particular access, while there hasn't been a lot of focus, what should have otherwise been, why it becomes very important, why it becomes even more significant, that this is the very axis that the Russians are really focusing in. And while the global media is busy telling everyone about what's the situation in Kiev, there hasn't been the kind of focus one should be giving to what really happens when there is an unabated war that is going on, a full-fledged war that is going on, and how the civilians are being affected. And these are areas which are far off. And as I've been saying, we've been traveling on a daily basis over thousands and thousands of kilometers just to try and document these places. They are far off. They are nowhere near, this place at least is nowhere near Kiev. It takes about a good few hours for the troops to actually reach Kiev. This is very close to Belarus, 30 kilometers away from Belarus. So the nearest city, if I may say so, from Belarus, which has been targeted. Of course, it becomes far more easier for the Russians to carry out attacks in these areas because it would perhaps take just few minutes for the fighter jets to take off from an airfield in Belarus and then perhaps reach areas, civilian areas on the Ukrainian side. And with a confirmation just minutes before we reached here, the Ukrainians have now confirmed that Belarus has officially become part of this war. They've sided with the Russians, and the fact that they've allowed the Russians to bring in, or rather mobilize themselves on the Belarus side, where they've brought in the battalion tactical groups, which is basically the more specialized groups that have been brought in by the Russian Federation, which would mean that in the days to come, the offensive from the Russian side would only increase, which would also mean that if the Russians now want to send in more of their troops through Belarus and try and enter Ukraine through the northern axis, it would become far more easier than what it was. This is something that the Ukrainians already suspect. So that is the reason why if you take a look at some of the areas, which is very difficult to film right now because there are a lot more checkpoints, lot more permissions to be taken before we reach even locations like these, you would find almost every checkpoint completely fortified. You would have a bunker that has been created, sacks of bags that have been kept at those checkpoints, and a lot more checking that is taking place, passports being checked. Even Ukrainians have to now show their passports when they are crossing those checkpoints, because they suspect that the Russians have now started to intermingle with the local population. We have also had some reports of Russians actually opening fire on civilians. Civilians have been targeted without any sort of warning. The Russians have opened fire on civilians who were moving from one place to the other. And how things are changing right now is that Russians also believe that, it's the Ukrainians who believe that the Russians have also brought in what they call the psychological combat units. Very difficult to verify this claim, but this is a claim in which the Ukrainians are saying that when these Russian psychological combat units have come into the picture, they are now trying to send across messages among the local population, especially in the areas where they have taken control, like in Cherniv, in Sumi, in Kharkiv, where they're trying to tell the local population that Ukraine perhaps will not be able to take up this fight. They'll not be able to sustain the fight. There is no support that the Ukrainians are really getting at this point in time. And that's something that the Ukrainians are trying to they've already rejected those kind of rumors that have been doing the rounds. You've had the president coming up and saying the video message that he had put out late last night, which has certainly become viral. It has reached a lot of people, where President Zelenskyy is saying that he's not going to leave Kiev, and this is a battle that they are going to win simply because of the fortitude that has been shown by the people of Ukraine, and more importantly, that he's now taken slightly aggressive positioning. You've seen the kind of statements that he has made with regards to NATO, with regards to the role that the West has played, calling in for a ban as far as the Russian oil is concerned. But that is again something that we haven't really seen the kind of support one would have expected. Germany has already made it abundantly clear that they're not going to be part of that ban that they've been talking about as far as oil and gas supply is concerned, because once again, if that happens, Russia has already threatened that they are going to stop the gas supply to European Union. So somewhere down the line, what Ukraine was really expecting in the first few days of the invasion, it's not really happening right now. It's a little different than what it was. So there is the element of frustration that you can see among the top leadership of Ukraine at this point in time. And they're hoping that beyond the military aid that has been promised, there would be some concrete action that would be taken by the West in order to help, in order to protect Ukraine. Because if that does not happen, then what you see around me, this is just going to continue. And as I've been pointing out, most of the places where which remained untouched in the initial few days of the invasion, it's just going to become like this. You have untouched areas now being targeted by the Russian Federation. And the fact that you have Belarus, a country which shares a large boundary with Ukraine, participating in the war and now aligning with Russia, which would only mean bad news for Ukraine. Because if Russia has full access to almost every resource of Belarus, which would mean that there is a direct access that Russia has from a large northern border. So you're looking at some of the areas like Lutsk, you're looking at another area called Rivne, and of course the place where we are, Zhitomir and Oruch, the very place from where we are broadcasting from. These are places which would have direct access from Belarus, which would mean that the Russian troops can enter from any side they wish to. And for the Ukrainians, it would be opening up many fronts. And if that really happens, remember, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Ukrainians to hold fort at this point in time. However, having said that, they have undoubtedly shown the kind of resistance. In fact, they've also questioned the fact that Russia, which has been touted as having one of the most powerful army, they haven't really been able to carry out the siege that they wanted of Kiev. And we have entered the 13th day. So things seem to be very different than what it was initially. The initial reports which had suggested that this war perhaps is not going to continue for very long and the Russians would emerge victorious. But that's not really happening, at least on the ground. That's not what we are witnessing. While the Ukrainians may have been successful in the pushback to the Russians, but what is really happening is that in the process, a lot more lives are being lost continuously from one place to the other that we have been going. As I've been saying, that our team, starting from all the way from eastern Ukraine, all the way from eastern Ukraine to western side to southern, and now we've reached the northern Ukraine, and we are seeing that almost every, if you take the map of Ukraine, every district of Ukraine has now been targeted. May not be many a times, may not be exactly like what's happening in Kharkiv where the shelling is taking place every day. But the fact of the matter is that there is nothing that is left untouched by the Russians. Almost every district has seen some bombing or the other that has taken place. Yes, in some areas where the military bases are the prime focus, say for instance in Vinnyets, which is a little down south. In Vinnyets, it was the military base that was targeted. In Klemensky, we are told there was another airport or an airfield that was targeted. Up north, we are seeing that it's not really military bases. It's up north or closer to Belarus border. It's largely the local population or areas where you would have much more civilians staying. Those are the areas which are now being targeted. As you see, what's happening behind me is right now the local authorities, these JCBs now being brought in, and they're trying to clear off the debris. That's the mangled remains of a car that must have been parked in the area when the bombing took place. And as I'm being told by the locals that what you are seeing right now is just half part of the house. There was another house before, which as you see is in rubbles right now. This is the very place where another house was there, and there is nothing to indicate that there was one before the bombing took place. So you can perhaps gauge the power of that bomb that was dropped. The local authorities claim that it is a 500 kilogram of bomb that was dropped, and we showed you a small part of the bomb that has been recovered by the authorities while they were clearing of the debris, which is now going to be taken by the district administration, and they are going to keep it with them. And we have seen that in almost every area when they're trying to clear off the debris. That's when these bombs, parts of these bombs are basically taken away and then they are kept. So all in all, if I can sum it up for all our viewers who are tuning in right now of what we have seen, what we have been doing over the last few days, we've been going to almost every area where a bombing has actually taken place, trying to speak to the local administration, trying to speak to the local population to try and understand what's really happening on the ground. And while we are doing that, let me also tell you that there is a strong sort of resistance that has been put up by the Ukrainians right now. A lot of people who have been here, they're saying that we never had the time to leave from these places, or even if we wanted to, we couldn't have done that because we do not have the option perhaps to try and go to safer locations because there is no such option available before them. That's the reason why you would find a lot of places where we have gone to in the last 24 to 48 hours, we have seen casualties. We have seen civil population being targeted, children being targeted, women being targeted, schools, colleges, all of that have been targeted. Let me stay with those images as the district administration tries to clear off the debris. We'll try and get you more information right now of what's really happened. Now, I can also take you through some of the details that we have picked up from the administration just a short while ago with regards to the operations that are being carried out. Let me just take you through some of the details, particularly as far as participation of Belarus is concerned. Now, this is what the Ukrainians are saying. 30 kilometers is where 30 kilometers away from Belarus is where we are, and not very far on the other side is a place in Belarus called the Alexandrivka. Now, that is the place where the Russians have been able to mobilize and bring in what they call the battalion tactical groups. There are about 38 such units, and they have transferred a higher level of combat readiness. But once again, what the Ukrainians are claiming that these are community units of the Russian army, 29, 35, 36A, and all of them have been brought in closer to the border areas. And if I can take you also through some of the details of which are the other areas where you're looking at the intense battle that's taking place, and which are the areas that the Russians have been able to capture. Sumi, if you look at it, that's on the eastern side, closer to Kharkiv, which now we are being told is a Russian-controlled territory. Then you also have Cherniv, which is again on the eastern side. That is also now under the Russian control. And up north here in Kiev, there is a small portion of the Kiev Oblast area where the Russians have been able to take more control. Let me also go across to my colleague Mridul. We are trying to just go to the place where the exact location where the bomb was actually dropped. We'll try and go. Mridul has been able to spot it. We'll try and go across to that very place and see what really happened, because that's where the impact took place, and that's why you see in this household, as we stay here, all the glass panes, the window panes that have been broken. So this looks like a complete residential area to me where the bombing actually took place, and we've just reached a place. I'm told that this is where the exact place where the bomb was dropped. So let's try and just go a little closer to get an exact look of what's really happened. Let me also bring in Mridul. Mridul, आप कुछ बता रहे थे कितने?
बिल्कुल, मैं श्रवण आपको बता दूं कि 3 बम यहाँ पर गिरे हुए हैं, और जो मेरे पास जानकारी पहुंची है 3 बम यहाँ पर गिरे हैं। और ये वो इलाका है जो सोवियत संघ का जब नक्शा था तो यहाँ पर आर्मी का बेस कैंप हुआ करता था, जो आपको सामने तस्वीरों में दिखाई दे रहा होगा। इसीलिए यहाँ पर बम फेंके गए। एक ये जगह है, दूसरी जगह वो है। पहली जगह ये है, करीब 20 से 30 फीट का एक गड्ढा होगा। दूसरा वो गड्ढा है जहाँ पर दूसरा बम गिरा था, वो भी। और तीसरा आपके ठीक पीछे है। 3 जगह पर बम गिरे और वहाँ पर भी बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान हुआ है। श्रवण, अगर हम तस्वीरों में दिखाने की कोशिश करेंगे तो
चलिए कोशिश करते हैं आगे जाने के लिए। So what Mridul was pointing out that there were exactly 3 bombs that were dropped in this area. So look at the size of the crater. This is the second, and what you see there where the workers are, that's the third place. They're basically trying to take some of the evidence from these craters that have been created. And Mridul is also saying that there is more damage that has been caused on the other side. So let's try and go there. We'll have to be a little careful while we are on our way, because there have been reports of explosions, even unexploded parts. So we'll have to be a little careful while we go there. And Mridul has also been pointing out, he's got some information now from the local administration while we've been reporting here. He's spoken to the local administration to get a sense, as I was telling you, that it's about a 500 kilogram of bomb. So multiple, not just one, about 3 such bombs that were dropped. And on the other side, there is more destruction. Take a look at the kind of destruction that's taken place. That was just one household. and now where we are going, there you would basically see more destruction that's taken place. And if I can bring in Mridul, आप कुछ कह रहे थे कि ये सोवियत era का कुछ यहाँ पे
हाँ बिल्कुल, क्योंकि ये जानकारी हमें जो आर्मी के पीआरओ थे जो सामने नहीं आए, उन्होंने बताया कि ये पूरा इलाका यूएसएसआर जब था, सोवियत संघ था, जब यहाँ पर आर्मी का बेस कैंप हुआ करता था, और उसी वजह से उसी नक्शे को देखते हुए यहाँ पर शेलिंग की गई है। और जब शेलिंग की गई तब ये इलाका जो है रिहायशी इलाका हो चुका है। लेकिन पुरानी बिल्डिंग आप देख सकते हैं जहाँ पर यूक्रेन का झंडा और सब कुछ आपको नजर आएगा। ये पुरानी बिल्डिंग है और ये 90 के दशक में बिल्डिंग बनाई गई थी, इसलिए यहाँ पर हमला किया गया है।
तो यहाँ पे कुछ मिलिट्री के कुछ लोग भी रहते, मिलिट्री के कुछ डिप्लॉयमेंट्स यहाँ पे हो चुके थे जब यहाँ पे बॉम्बिंग।
हाँ, पहले डिप्लॉयमेंट हो गए थे। और ये जो बिल्डिंग इस समय हम देख रहे हैं जो पूरी की पूरी उड़ चुकी है, जिसके परकच्चे उड़ गए, ये बिल्डिंग जो है सरकारी बिल्डिंग है, गवर्नमेंट बिल्डिंग है। और यहाँ पर आप तस्वीरें जब देखते थे तो यहाँ पर एम्प्लॉयज़ काम करते थे, सरकारी कामकाज चल रहा था, लेकिन उसके पहले ही इसे खाली करा दिया गया था। और वहाँ पर लोग पहुँचे थे, जहाँ आप दूसरी तस्वीर दिखा रहे थे वहाँ ज़रूर लोग मौजूद थे, लेकिन ये सरकारी बिल्डिंग है, वो बोर्ड भी आपको नजर आ रहा होगा, और ये वो सोवियत संघ के पुराने जमाने की बिल्डिंग।
So as we understand that while the residential areas have also been targeted, now where we have reached, Mridul, after speaking to the public relations officer here to try and understand, this is basically a government building, and take a look at this, the impact of the bombing. In fact, when we told that apart from the aerial bombardment, there was also shelling that took place, and this is what remains of the building. Now, this building, viewers, was a government building where government staff were present, and they were working when the bombing and the shelling took place. So it's at multiple locations, at multiple times where this bombing has taken place. So what you see behind me is the remains of a government building which has been targeted. So clearly there is an attempt that has been made by the Russians to instill some amount of fear among the Ukrainians that this is not going to be only areas of civilian areas, but also government officers who would be targeted, and that's exactly what's happening. And by the looks of the kind of damage that has taken place, one would actually understand what would be the power of the bombing or the bombs that were used, because this kind of destruction to take place, one will certainly have to use a high intensity bomb. And what the local administration was pointing out, that about 500 kilogram, and it is justified, the fact that only a 500 kilogram bomb could lead to this kind of destruction. I'll ask Rawatji to also be a little careful while he goes a little closer to give you those images of the building. This appears to be a two-floor building, a two-floor government building that has been completely... What you see right now is just rubbles. And this is the kind of destruction that's taking place. I'll also ask someone from the newsroom to also take over so that we can meanwhile also get in some more information and tell our viewers of exactly what's really happened. There are some locals who have also gathered here. We'll try and also speak to them while we stay with these images, because these are the latest images of a bombing as recently as in the last 24 hours that has happened. And as we've been showing you, civilian areas were targeted, 30 households, and now this is the government building that we have come to, which has been completely destroyed because of the bombing that was carried out by the Russian troops.
All right, Shravan, stay safe, and thank you so much for getting us all those ground updates. The situation certainly remains critical in several parts of Ukraine, especially cities surrounding Kiev. And Shravan getting us non-stop live updates from Ground Zero. Shravan, we let you go for the moment. Thank you.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 9 years. with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
बड़ी संख्या में लोग कीव की तरफ जा रहे हैं.
We have reached right at the ground zero. As you can see, no other global channel is at the spot.
टैंक की तस्वीर, ऐश्वर्या टैंक की तस्वीर.
What you see right now is the debris of this building when a projectile missile hit this building. Alexandra से हमने रिपोर्टिंग की. वहाँ पे हमने देखा कि रेजिडेंशियल इलाकों में ये शेलिंग हुई थी. This is the crater that has been created. The impact of the attack that took place.
पूरा का पूरा शहर खाली हो गया है. लाइव तस्वीर रिपब्लिक भारत पर एक्सक्लूसिव. टैंक के साथ साथ रिपब्लिक भारत की टीम आगे बढ़ रही है.
You see right now our fighter jets on the skies of Kiev caught on Republic camera. Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago, where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage that has actually taken place. And right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing former military position of the Ukraine army. We can see a bridge over here that was destroyed, we're told by the locals, by Ukrainian forces. There's a siren alert that has taken place, I think, so we'll have to move out from here. We're getting inside the car right now. I'll ask my entire team to quickly come. This is not very far from Kiev. So this is the place where the bombings have taken place earlier in the day. Driver Sergey is going to take us away from this very place. We'll try and go to a place which is a little safer. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. What you see right now is the debris all around.
पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है.
And right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing a former military position of the Ukraine army. These are the latest images of a hospital which has been completely destroyed. Look at the damage that has been caused. What you see around me is large-scale destruction.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया. सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं. पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है. उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है. पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है.
Zelenskyy says he's ready to discuss on Russia's demands, claims he's ready to discuss Crimea. President Zelenskyy says lost interest in NATO, says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. Israel Prime Minister Naftali Bennett speaks to Ukraine President Zelenskyy, discussion over mediation. Evacuation of Indian citizens begins in Sumi. First batch of Indian students evacuated. India issues urgent advisory for students in Kiev, urges students to use 10-hour humanitarian corridor. European Union blames Belarus for situation in Ukraine, calls Belarus the co-aggressor. Germany opens investigation into Russia's use of cluster munitions and shelling on residential buildings. Republic is the only channel reporting from Korostan bombing sites just a few kilometers away from Chernobyl nuclear plant. A quick update before we move on to our ground reports. US President Joe Biden has decided to ban Russian oil imports, toughening the toll on Russia's economy in retaliation for its invasion of Ukraine. US now blocking Russian oil imports. Big breaking news update, because remember, this comes as the German Chancellor, though, opposed the idea of banning Russian oil and gas imports as part of sanctions against Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. United States now taking a different stand, though. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Sunday had though said that US and its European allies were still exploring banning imports of oil from Russia. Now a decision coming in, reports suggesting that US has blocked Russian oil imports. Certainly a big update coming in because this is an action that has once again been taken against Russia's invasion into Ukraine. Already we are seeing gas prices surging to record peaks after Blinken's statement, but certainly this is indeed once again going to be drawing a lot of responses. First up, let's quickly play out the statement made by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I beg your pardon, President Biden has spoken. Listen in.
Meeting today, I want to give you an update on Ukraine. We continue to impose very severe, well, at least it's in the middle, we'll drop in the middle. We shouldn't be.
We're the only global channel getting you non-stop ground reports, and yes, we've been reporting from across 14 cities in the war-torn nation of Ukraine. Not just that, we've also been reporting from several other European nations on what the status of NATO and its deployment, military deployment across those neighboring nations is concerned. But this report filed by Patrick earlier on from the rebel region of Donetsk, getting you the latest ground situation. Take a look.
We found some children here. Pretty sad situation. They don't know what's going to happen next. But we're hoping the best for them. But now they're here in Donetsk, People's Republic of Russian-controlled territory, so hopefully they'll be taken care of. I'm Patrick Lancaster with a special report for Republic Media Network. And right behind me are some tents that are specially set up for the refugees that are now arriving from Mariupol. Now, right now, we are in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory. And these are set up by the local authorities here. And we just saw an ambulance leave, and that's because they were carrying a injured man that just came off one of the buses here. We've seen a couple of injuries so far. One child that had to be carried off, and a injured man that had a patch on his eye. We've got a lot more to come, but it seems like this ceasefire is finally starting to make some headway, and some people are leaving Mariupol and through their choice coming to this side, evacuating the somewhat Ukraine-controlled territory of Mariupol and evacuating to the Russian-controlled territory, DPR territory. So we're going to continue to show you exactly what's happening here on the ground. But this ceasefire seems to be taking hold today, so we're going to continue covering it and show you everything that's happening.
Terming Russian President Vladimir Putin as a beast who will never be satisfied, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy warned Western countries that the ongoing war will not stop at Ukraine and will affect the rest of the world as well. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia said in a statement that Russia had declared a ceasefire amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine from 10 a.m. Moscow time to provide humanitarian corridors in the cities of Kiev, Chernihiv, Sumi, Kharkiv and Mariupol. Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that as a result of 2 Russian airstrikes, oil depots in Zhitomir and Chernihiv were hit. Head of Sumi Regional State Administration had said at least 10 people, including children, were killed as a result of targeted bombings by Russia. Former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych held talks with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and urged him to overcome his pride and stop fighting at any cost. This comes at a time when Russian forces have launched unabated attacks on major Ukrainian cities. Britain's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the process of granting Ukrainian refugees with visas to reside in UK will be quicker as the Home Secretary is determined to speed up the identification process. US announced that over 500 US troops would be deployed in Europe to reinforce NATO's flank, including Poland, Romania, Germany and Greece. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby assured that the US Army will not be sent to conflict-ridden Ukraine. Australia has imposed another round of sanctions against Russia. Australian Foreign Minister said the Australian government is placing sanctions on Moscow's propagandists trying to legitimize Russia's invasion with false narratives such as denazification of Ukraine. The Korean government has imposed additional sanctions against Russia, including suspension of transactions with the Russian Central Bank in consideration of the international community's level of economic sanctions on Russia. The Japanese Foreign Ministry unveiled the details of the third sanctions package against Russia and Belarus in connection with the situation in Ukraine. Personal sanctions were imposed against another 20 Russians and 12 Belarusian citizens, as well as against 2 more Russian and 12 Belarusian organizations. The World Bank approved a $723 million package of loans and grants for Ukraine and a supplemental budget support package for Ukraine called Financing of Recovery from Economic Emergency in Ukraine for $489 million. The following clip shows a school shot at in Sumi. Bullet holes can be seen peeking through the walls of the building. Bullets can even be seen affecting the utensils inside this building. A pile of debris next to defaced vehicles recorded at night are the scenes of a private residential sector in Sumi. The clip shows heavy blocks of houses that stood once lying on the ground in a littered heap. Bombs dropped on Sumi reportedly by Russian planes fell on a residential neighborhood and damaged houses. People reportedly were killed by the attack and are still under the debris. Some of the victims are assumed to be children. This clip shows Ukrainian Bayraktar drones attacking one of the vehicles of the 63-kilometer-long convoy that has come to a halt near the outskirts of Kiev. In a unique show of bravery, some Ukrainian women have decided to join the battle against Russian forces along with the men. They stated they had led their children to safety and preserved their country's genetic makeup and were now returning to the country to join the war.
Мы женщины Украины. Мы благословили наших мужчин на защиту нашей земли. Мы уже вывезли наших детей в безопасное место. Генофонд нашей нации защищен. Мы присоединяемся к мужчинам и украинской армии. Мы будем уничтожать врага на каждом сантиметре украинской земли, в каждом нашем городе, в каждом селе, в лесу и в поле. За каждого ребенка, женщину, старика, разрушенный дом, улицу, даже сарай.
President Zelenskyy said he would stay in Kyiv as long as it's necessary to win what he called a patriotic war. Zelenskyy accused Russia of violating agreements on humanitarian corridors, saying Russian troops mined the route agreed for delivery of aid. He also said that Ukraine would continue talks to reach peace in the country. President Vladimir Putin said in a video message that conscripts are not and will not be involved in combat operations in Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. He added that the reserves would also not be mobilized. He further said that the set goals will be achieved only by professional soldiers and that he's confident that they will reliably ensure security and peace for Russian people. President Zelenskyy made a direct appeal to Americans to support his country's war against Russian invasion. He urged the United States to support Ukraine not only with words but with concrete and direct steps. He said that if Russia overruns Ukraine, the battle will continue as an insurgency. This comes at a time when US and many other Western countries have backed Ukraine with weapons shipments but vowed not to send troops. An advisor to Ukrainian president said that minor progress had been made on humanitarian corridors during a third round of talks with Russia. He also added, without much elaboration, that there were some small positive shifts regarding logistics of humanitarian corridors. He also said that consultations would continue on ways to negotiate and an end to the ongoing hostilities. The Russian Defense Ministry accused Ukraine of interfering with the humanitarian corridors opened for a second time. The head of National Defense Command Center said that Ukrainian side hasn't stood by a single condition of establishing humanitarian corridors. He also added that the nationalists threatening violence are simply not releasing civilians and foreign citizens, and also accused the Ukrainian side of maintaining military activity around the corridors. Residents of Irpin attempted to flee from suburb of Kiev. Over the weekend, the shelling continued despite a ceasefire. Panicked families ran alongside a road to get to buses, while mothers were seen desperately handing their children to soldiers and strangers to help assist them escape. Irpin, remember, has been cut off from electricity, water and heating for 3 days now.
And the soldiers in my city, Russian soldiers. And we killing people.
Shelling continued in Kharkiv, hitting residential buildings and injuring Ukrainian civilians. A 5-story residential block lost an entire wall after it was shelled. In southern Ukraine, as Russian forces continued their offensive, rescuers said they were putting out fire caused by rocket attacks in residential areas. The video shows stairs badly damaged of residential building after the strike, including women who sustained injuries. As Russia announced yet another limited ceasefire in Ukraine, combat units from rebel-controlled Donetsk People's Republic had time to regroup and resupply. Russia announced the establishment of safe corridors to allow civilians to flee some besieged cities of Ukraine. Houses, gardens and vehicles in a suburb of Kyiv have been destroyed by shelling as Russian troops advanced towards the Ukrainian capital. Horenka, a village of 3,000 residents some 20 kilometers north of Kyiv, was shelled with Grad missiles. Fighting between Ukrainian and Russian troops could be seen taking place just 3 kilometers from the village, and some of the injured soldiers were taken to Horenka from the battlefield for aid. As was promised by Ukrainians, provisions for a humanitarian corridor were undertaken by the Ukrainian side. As a result, a group of foreign nationals were seen exiting the city in a bus. The corridor created in Sumi led to Poltava at the Russian border. Both these sides are expected to respect international humanitarian laws for the safe transport of citizens to the border areas. Russian armed forces captured a tank on the bases in central Ukraine. The fully equipped tank was reportedly used against Russians in previous encounters. Amid shelling from the Ukraine inside, visuals emerged showing how Kurdish fighters evacuated children to safety from Makarov, the coastal region of Russia. And as the Russian assault rages on, Kharkiv stands devastated. Visuals of the city show little dissimilarity with urban centers bombed over the years across various countries. Farmers in Ukraine seized Russian armored vehicles in an area in the north of Kyiv. The highly advanced military equipment was seen being towed by the tractors. A fighter jet shot down at night near the outskirts of Kyiv caused a significant explosion that lit up the night sky. A convoy of Russian military fuel trucks was seen heavily damaged due to attacks by Ukrainian forces. The trucks were a part of one of the convoys parading through Ukraine at the moment. A church could be seen burning in a Ukrainian village and was yet another victim of the Russian fire. The structure was seen burning in the village in Brovary area of Ukraine. Occupiers of an unknown origin reportedly destroyed the interiors of a church in Kharkiv as well. The heavily damaged church is situated in the Vyazvika village of Zhitomir. A residential area was seen destroyed in the city of Irpin. The city is one of the most recent additions to urban areas facing Russian aggression. The following clip shows dozens of casualties near Russian tanks. The column was attacked by Ukraine's Bayraktar drones in a location outside the country's urban settlements. An apartment building was seen heavily damaged following Russian military strikes in Mykolaiv. The attack is once again a result of the ongoing assault on the city situated near the Black Sea. A voluntary force with reportedly neo-Nazi leanings killed 8 Russian soldiers in the village of Belarus, known as the Azov Battalion. The group is one of the many volunteer organizations fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. Cars, streets and buildings only show the aftermath of damage caused to Ukrainian civilians in the ongoing invasion. On the following day of the attack in Kharkiv neighborhood, some residents returned to the site to retrieve their belongings while some were hospitalized owing to the shrapnel.
What I can tell you is that it suits Putin's agenda to try to characterize this as a struggle between the West and Russia. And it suits his agenda to say that the UK, that we in NATO countries are anti-Russian, or European countries are now anti-Russian. And it's very, very, very important that we get the message over that we're not anti-Russian. We're not against Russians. Our quarrel is simply with the regime and the aggression of Vladimir Putin.
Putin will find that the truth is not easily suppressed. And I want to express our solidarity with all peaceful anti-invasion protesters in Russia and applaud their courage to stand up publicly. So on behalf of the European Parliament, I call on the Russian authorities to free all those unjustly jailed, to allow the freedom of expression. I call on Russian authorities to stop intimidating protesters and release immediately all those who are detained.
But right now, we're in a war. He's weaponized, Putin has weaponized energy. He's weaponized the gas and the oil that flows. That's his money machine. We can offset that. We have to. And the bottom line is, if you're going to fight a warmonger such as Putin, you better have a weapon that'll at least offset what he's doing, and we have it in energy, we have it in America, so let's do it.
This is, of course, about Ukrainians and Ukraine, but it's also about more than that. It's about standing up for the rules-based order that has led to unprecedented peace and stability and growth around the world over the past many decades, and the pushback that one, like Russia, like Putin specifically, cannot overthrow those 75 plus years of peace and stability and still benefit from the economic largesse and growth that comes with that.
Well, again, we can't speak to President Putin's what's in his mind, what's in his brain, and the totality of what his intentions are. We've already seen him take a range of steps. We've provided $1 billion in security assistance. We're not halting that, right? We're not halting our support for the Ukrainians. So we're not waiting for the advice of Vladimir Putin on what we're going to do here as it relates to backfilling planes.
What we believe is happening as the Russians continue to get frustrated and slow down, and they really haven't made any noteworthy progress in the last few days, with the exception of down south. In the south, they continue to have some progress, but up in the north and northeast, what we assess is as they continue to get frustrated, they continue to rely now more on what we would call long-range fires.
We are unable to meet the needs of civilians today. All those points that I have made are points in preparation, in supply, in redeployment, in getting to the right place. But we're failing to meet the needs of civilians today at this time.
Russia continues to cynically disregard the norms of international humanitarian law during hostilities. Russian troops block numerous attempts of the Ukrainian authorities to evacuate civilians through humanitarian corridors. They denied access of international organizations to provide humanitarian assistance to the most affected places.
We call for the Russian Federation to agree to and honor in good faith Ukrainian proposals for time-bound humanitarian safe passage in specific agreed-upon locations. We call for the establishment of a ground-level notification system that will facilitate the safe movement of humanitarian convoys and flights. This is imperative for ensuring humanitarian supplies and commodities can be reliably transported into Ukraine to reach those most in need.
I'm very glad to tell you that on Sunday, UNICEF delivered 40 tons of medical life-saving items for children and mothers to 22 hospitals in 5 of the most affected regions. This equipment included midwifery and obstetrics kits, resuscitation and surgical kits, oxygen concentrators for shelters, hospitals, and first aid kits for frontline workers, enough to meet the needs of 20,000 children and their mothers.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 9 years, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
There's a siren alert that has taken place, I think, so we'll have to move out from here. We're getting inside the car right now. I'll ask my entire team to quickly come. This is not very far from Kiev. So this is the place where the bombings have taken place earlier in the day. Driver Sergey is going to take us away from this very place. We'll try and go to a place which is a little safer. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. What you see right now is the debris all around.
पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है.
And right behind me you can see this tractor that is demolishing a former military position of the Ukraine army.
These are the latest images of a hospital which has been completely destroyed. Look at the damage that has been caused. What you see around me is large-scale destruction.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया. सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं. पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है. उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है. पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है. आप चारों तरफ जहां भी आपकी नजर जाएगी वहां आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ तबाही नजर आएगी.
We have reached a hospital which has been completely destroyed. These are the latest images of the kind of destruction that has taken place after an aerial bombardment. Sukhois that were deployed from the airfields of Belarus, and then the aerial bombardment was carried out here in Zhitomir and then in Kyiv. On the other side is that very building. Look at the damage that has been caused here that we are right now. Around me is the result of that aerial bombardment that has taken place, starting from what happened in a school. Then we went to a maternity hospital. This is the third location where we have reached, and what you see around me is large-scale destruction.
I'm Patrick Lancaster, and this is a special report for Republic Media Network. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. But DPR forces and Russian forces have captured this position and area that we're in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory.
बड़ी संख्या में लोग कीव की तरफ जा रहे हैं.
We have reached right at the ground zero. As you can see, no other global channel is at the spot.
टैंक की तस्वीर, ऐश्वर्या टैंक की तस्वीर.
What you see right now is the debris of this building when a projectile missile hit this building. Alexandra से हमने रिपोर्टिंग की. वहाँ पे हमने देखा कि रेजिडेंशियल इलाकों में ये शेलिंग हुई थी. This is the crater that has been created. The impact of the attack that took place.
पूरा का पूरा शहर खाली हो गया है. लाइव तस्वीर रिपब्लिक भारत पर एक्सक्लूसिव. टैंक के साथ साथ रिपब्लिक भारत की टीम आगे बढ़ रही है.
You see right now our fighter jets on the skies of Kiev caught on Republic cameras. Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage.
Live report powered by Amity University.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Republic TV. We begin with the breaking news that's coming in, a political earthquake almost in the state of Maharashtra. Today, for the very first time in the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly, we see leader of opposition Devendra Fadnavis coming out with a pen drive. Viewers, that pen drive has claimed to have 125 hours of video recording of a special public prosecutor who's allegedly conspiring to trap opposition leaders. It's one of the biggest political earthquakes that are going to be caused in the state of Maharashtra. Devendra Fadnavis hands over a pen drive of selected videos to the speaker. He demands a CBI inquiry in the matter, and he claims that they were trying to trap opposition leaders, which include Girish Mahajan. And he hands over the pen drive to the assembly. Viewers, one of the biggest stories to hit politics in recent times. He says there is so much material in it that there could be a web series. Devendra Fadnavis is reading out the call data records of conspiracy that were made against the BJP leaders and submitting video proof in the Maharashtra Assembly today. Even as we would like to play that out, because this is clearly sparking off and exposing new things, I want to go across to Member of Parliament, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, one of the country's most known faces, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani. Mr. Jethmalani, what Devendra Fadnavis has tried to expose as the leader of opposition in the assembly is sensational and shocking. And what it's trying to show is a nexus between government lawyers, agencies and politicians to frame BJP leaders.
Yeah, Rhythm, this is the most sordid event, and Mr. Fadnavis has said that the state government should transfer this matter to the CBI. And according to me, in the state of Maharashtra, nobody can be trusted for a fair investigation. Immediately, the matter should be handed over to the CBI as per Mr. Fadnavis' demand. It's the only right thing to do. And thereafter, the CBI should take it over and immediately arrest the special public prosecutor, Mr. Chavan, who is the center of this entire earthquake. Of course, while one says he's the center, it's only because his entire conversation has been taped over 125 hours, in which he reveals this most sordid episode, which consists of, in which the parties have been the highest politicians, the most senior leaders of the state of Maharashtra's Maharashtra Vikas Agadi government. They have all been party to a criminal conspiracy to falsely implicate opposition leaders, including by planting bloodstained knives on one of them. I mean, that's the extent. This is the lowest level of politics. Ever since the exposure of Anil Deshmukh, this government has moved from one disaster. If Makoka should be applied to anybody, it should be to all these persons who have been parties to this conspiracy, about which the first person to be arrested, as I said, is Special Public Prosecutor Chavan. And please understand, in this videotape, the gentleman, Mr. Chavan, has given evidence of police officers who were unwilling to be members of this, to be parties to this conspiracy of false implication of opposition leaders. Those police officers were shunted out, replaced at the behest of the most powerful politicians in the state of Maharashtra with new police officers. Cabinet ministers who are also consulted on this matter said this should not be done. I'm not taking any names, but Mr. Fadnavis has, the tape recording has those names. This is visual and audio evidence of the highest caliber. This is the most contemptible conspiracy. And it is time, if the CBI does not take over this case, courtesy the consent of the state government, a 226 petition or even a 32 petition in the Supreme Court should be filed, because this is crime at the highest levels and the most dastardly crimes.
Mr. Jethmalani, we've also heard, and this viewers needs to be verified because the entire conversation was in Marathi that was played out in the assembly. Mr. Jethmalani, there is possibly a hint we are picking up of them being different cases that were going to be put against the BJP leaders. Includes a fake drug case, a fake half murder case allegedly, and they were being plotted by government lawyers to be put with fake witnesses. Now, if the charges are so serious, how is this going to play out in the state? Because it's clearly causing a political earthquake now in the state of Maharashtra.
I mean, this has to go to a court. The court has to view it in a manner which it deems fit. And thereafter, if anything transpires, this government should be taken to task. All the people who are responsible for the conspiracy should meet their just deserts. And I think it might well be a case for dismissal of the state government. Though I don't think that needs to be done, because this government is on its last legs after today's episode. It was always shaky, but now it's definitely on its last legs, and nothing can save it. And the more they try to do it, they should now take an honorable exit. And those who are not party to this conspiracy should see the writing on the wall, see how serious the crime is, which this audio and video exposes, and they should distance themselves from the activities of those who have most to lose in this government, because they've been caught, their hands in the till, in a corrupt till. Financial misdemeanors of the highest order by those who are now trying to falsely implicate, in absurd cases, members of the opposition. So those who are innocent should distance themselves from those people who are guilty of this unholy conspiracy.
Yes. My last question to you, sir, as we're looking at this expose, which is showing the nexus between government lawyers, it clearly goes to the very top. Because this is right now, like you said, on tape, the special public prosecutor. But obviously, instructions for such cases have to be given by higher-ups.
Absolutely. I mean, both at the political level and the police level, those at the very highest levels are involved. There's no question about it. It is already on tape itself, those who are involved. I don't want to take any names and prejudice anybody because the tape has to be verified, though I have no doubt that it is authentic. But it needs to be verified in a manner known to law. It needs to be put before the right judicial forum, and action thereafter has to follow, again, as per procedure established by law.
Yes, thank you, sir, for giving us those details. It's a story we're going to very closely watch, because this could be end game for the MVA, as already we are seeing political tremors being caused in the state of Maharashtra. Thank you, Mr. Jethmalani, for being with us.
Thank you. Welcome.
Global debate on how far will Putin go. Zelenskyy hints at recognizing Crimea. 13 days of war, 3 rounds of talks. What next? Global debate on Russia's options.
Zelenskyy says he's ready to discuss on Russia's demands. He claims he's ready to discuss Crimea. Ukraine President Zelenskyy says lost interest in NATO. Says NATO is not interested in inducting Ukraine. Israel Prime Minister Naftali Bennett speaks to Ukraine President Zelenskyy, discussions over mediation. Evacuation of Indian citizens begins in Sumi. First batch of Indian students evacuated. India issues an urgent advisory for students in Kyiv, urges students to use the 10-hour humanitarian corridor. European Union blames Belarus for the situation in Ukraine, calls Belarus the co-aggressor. Germany opens investigations into Russia's use of cluster munitions and shellings on residential buildings. And Republic is the only channel reporting from Khorasan bombing sites just a few kilometers away from Chernobyl nuclear plant. इधर से कर. Viewers, our top focus on the breaking news that's coming in less than 2 weeks into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're also seeing the country's people, the armed forces, continuing to mount a staunch offensive on the Russian forces. And as the offensive continues, so does the bravery. We show you reports of how the Russian artillery is wreaking havoc in Ukraine, but we also show you reports of how the mighty weapons of the Soviet-era superpower are also being destroyed by them. Here's that report.
The Ukrainian war has seen some unprecedented bravery stories, be it civilians joining the army or men coming back home to fight Russians. Watch this video, how the Ukrainian men have destroyed the mighty Russian tanks in Sumi. The damaged and tangled warheads of Russian artillery may affect Russian arms exports too. The so-called subordinate Ukrainian forces are destroying Russian tanks, fighter jets, helicopters and mobile air defense systems. Ukrainian army has not only destroyed many Russian weapons but also captured the mighty warriors of the Russian army. As the war in Ukraine refuses to come to an end, it's civilians who are bearing the brunt of Russian offensive. Agency report for Republic TV.
Viewers, we now show you reports that are being brought in by Republic team from Overich. It's now a ghost town that was attacked by missiles from Russia. Not only were they attacked, but residential buildings were attacked at Overich. As we show you this report, we're the only news channel to be reporting from Overich and giving you these ground realities, because as we've seen, residential buildings have been decimated. Take a look.
30 kilometers away from Belarus, Republic Media Network has reached another bombing site. What you see behind me is a house that was completely demolished in an aerial bombardment. In fact, a 500-kilogram bomb was dropped by the Russians around 2:30 in the morning. About 30 households in this area called Ozurk has been completely demolished. What you see is the remains of this very household. In fact, on the other side, if I can just show you how the damage has actually taken place. In fact, this place where we are broadcasting right now from is not very far from Belarus. It's just about 30 kilometers. So it's pretty much the border of Ukraine and Belarus. And see the kind of damage that has taken place. And just a short while ago, a breaking news also coming in, how the general staff of the armed forces here in Ukraine has now confirmed that Belarus is already participating in the war.
And viewers, there's a sliver of hope coming in from the city of Sumi. Even as the city saw mass-scale destruction, there is now a humanitarian corridor that is at work there. There's a report shared and there's a video shared by the Ukrainian government. Even civilians and Indians who are stranded in Sumi are now being evacuated. We showed you 12 buses that were taking Indians who were evacuated today. Here's that report and that video from the Ukrainian government.
The Ukrainian city of Sumi was given a green corridor as the first stage of evacuation began. Deputy head of the presidential office, Kyrilo Tymoshenko, announced about the evacuation process in his social media post. He also released a video showing evacuation convoys with civilians leaving the city. As Ukrainian news agencies reported, on Tuesday, a humanitarian corridor was planned from the city of Sumi along the Sumi-Holubivka, Lokvitsia-Lubny-Poltava route to evacuate the population. Sumi is just 60 kilometers from eastern Russian border, but civilians could not be evacuated due to heavy shelling and fighting. Hopefully, now they will get a safe exit from the city. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Viewers, we now show you a haunting war report. A report that comes in from my colleague Shavan Sen, who's showing you what a war bunker in the historic city of Korenston looks like. This is a place that had been shelled and bombed, and today the entire town lies in debris. As we get you this report, we remind you, Republic is the only team that is also nearest in the Chernobyl area, the now defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant area.
Korenston is one of the crucial areas for the Russians because remember, just up north is Belarus, from where the military operation has been started by the Russians, and for them it's becoming far more easier to attack these areas because what you see is that they have direct access to the airfields there, from where aerial bombardment it is far more easier to carry out those operations, air operations. And as you see, these are places where people were still living, and as I was been pointing out in all my broadcasts, that it is never easy for a lot of people to run away or to leave their own homes. And for many this question would be, why is it that these areas haven't been evacuated? It is simply because there are several people that we have come across who have been telling us time and again that they do not have the wherewithal to, essentially, they do not have the wherewithal to leave the places and go to perhaps a little safer area, simply because those options are not available to them.
Viewers, in solidarity with Ukraine, Polish MEP Dominik Tarczyński has slammed Germany for refusing to impose sanctions on oil and gas that are coming in from Russia. In fact, it notes that Germany refuses to sanction Russian oil and gas because it could affect the country's economy. Let's listen in to what he said.
We've got this very important discussion on this very important report, and what we could hear from Commissioner Jourova was that she's very happy about the ban, Netflix ban in Russia. Are you serious? Are you really serious? We need a ban on Russian oil and gas before you will have your satisfaction on Netflix ban. So before the discussion will turn into a grotesque, remember that Germany, so-called European leaders, are against the ban on Russian oil and gas. And money from the gas and oil will go to Russian army. And the Russian army will kill Ukrainian children. So before this discussion will turn into a grotesque, remember that a Netflix is a joke. Ban on Netflix is a joke because people are dying. So we need a ban on Russian oil and gas now. And remember, it's Germany who is against it. And history will judge you again. Remember that. Thank you.
And viewers, there are pictures that we are showing you, the latest pictures of French President Emmanuel Macron and talks that were right after he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the war in Ukraine. Remember, this is coming after he's one of the very few leaders who's kept options open to talking with Putin and had asked for a ceasefire. These are the latest pictures of French President Emmanuel Macron. They were taken right after he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the war in Ukraine. Now, even as we're trying to get a sense of what happened, we do remember Macron had urged Putin to end military operations and protect the Ukraine nuclear sites. This is something that was said yesterday, and the French official confirmed Macron had also a phone exchange earlier on Sunday for nearly 2 hours with Putin. However, Macron had also, remember, viewers, stayed in regular touch with Putin, but as with other international efforts, has yet to persuade Moscow to call off the war now in the 13th day. Pictures of Emmanuel Macron after that talk with Vladimir Putin. And Putin, remember, had said on Sunday that his campaign in Ukraine was going according to plan and would not end until Kyiv stopped fighting. On the 13th day of the war in Ukraine by the invasion by Russia, we now show you pictures of Russian armed forces that are seen capturing Ukrainian tank bases and in central Ukraine. Take a look.
Russia's unabated conquest of Ukraine continues for the 13th day, with intense shelling and damages reported to civilian infrastructure alongside numerous human casualties. Watch this video. One can see Russian armed forces have captured one of the Ukrainian tank bases in central Ukraine. The equipment was moved recently from the storage for participation in hostilities against the Russian armed forces and was fully equipped. Now, the Ukrainian tanks have been taken to Russian military bases and will be used for the battle against Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has claimed that Ukraine's militants are blocking the evacuation of civilians from Mariupol and Volnovakha. With continued failure in Russia-Ukraine peace talks, the war situation has intensified. Agency report for Republic TV.
Viewers, we now show you one of the most poignant pictures of war that are coming through. We get you a report from an underground war bunker. Our colleague Shavan Sen reports in Korenstein, a historic city, shows this bunker where children could have possibly been living and shows how life has been on the 13th day of the Russian invasion.
In fact, in Korenstein, where we've been reporting from, what we have been highlighting is that how civilians have lost their lives. Right now, I've reached one household where these are heartbreaking stories. When the attack actually took place, as I was pointing out in my last broadcast, that civilians were staying in this very place. Now, I'll just try and show it to our viewers. This, what you see right now, is where children were actually staying. That when the attack actually took place, there were 5 children who were inside this very bunker, and this entire place was caught on fire. As you can see right now, what's really happened is that this entire area, this entire room where children were actually staying, about 5 children were staying when the Russians carried out an aerial bombardment. This entire area has been completely destroyed, damaged, as you see, leading to large-scale destruction.
And viewers, we're going to tell you how Russian strikes caused fire in oil depots in Kharkiv and Zhitomir region. Even as this happened, Ukraine state emergency was announced and they said they were able to douse the flames. Ukraine reported a fire in 2 of the oil depots at Zhitomir region in the regional center and the village in Kharkiv. Take a look at this report.
2 massive airstrikes hit Ukraine's Zhitomir and Chernihiv on Monday evening. 2 oil depots were devastated in the Russian airstrikes. In Zhitomir, a tank with a capacity of 10 cubic meters caught fire, while in another incident, 2 half-empty tanks caught fire in the village of Chernihiv. Officials have informed that no loss of life was reported as civilians were evacuated from the residential areas. In the latest attacks, Russia has been targeting oil depots and gas pipelines to disrupt the fuel supply of Ukraine. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Viewers, Republic now brings you reports from a refugee camp in Donetsk. There are refugees arriving from Mariupol to this camp where tents are being set and essential supplies are being given to the refugees who are coming to Donetsk. Take a look at this report.
Right behind me are some tents that are specially set up for the refugees that are now arriving from Mariupol. Now, right now, we are in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory. And these are set up by the local authorities here, and we just saw an ambulance leave, and that's because they were carrying a injured man that just came off one of the buses here. We've seen a couple of injuries so far, one child that had to be carried off, and a injured man that had a patch on his eye. It seems like this ceasefire is finally starting to make some headway, and some people are leaving Mariupol and through their choice coming to this side, evacuating the somewhat Ukraine-controlled territory of Mariupol and evacuating to the Russian-controlled territory, DPR territory. So we're going to continue to show you exactly what's happening here on the ground. But the ceasefire seems to be taking hold today.
And coming up after a short break, European Union blames Belarus for the situation in Ukraine, calls Belarus the co-aggressor. And Germany opens investigation into Russia's use of cluster munitions and shelling on residential buildings. Much more after a short break. Stay on with us.
ये वो इलाका है ज़िटोमिर का जहां थोड़ी देर पहले रेड अलर्ट जारी किया गया, सायरन बजे, लोगों से कहा गया कि वो अपने घरों में छिप जाएं। पूरी की पूरी इमारत जो है ढह गई है। उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर कितना नुकसान हुआ है। पहली मर्तबा युद्ध के क्षेत्र में सुखोई का इस्तेमाल करके ऐसी तबाही हुई है। आप चारों तरफ जहां भी आपकी नजर जाएगी वहां आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ तबाही नजर आएगी।
We have reached a hospital which has been completely destroyed. These are the latest images of the kind of destruction that has taken place after an aerial bombardment. Sukhois that were deployed from the airfields of Belarus, and then the aerial bombardment was carried out here in Zhitomir and then in Kyiv. On the other side is that very building. Look at the damage that has been caused here that we are right now. Around me is the result of that aerial bombardment that has taken place, starting from what happened in a school. Then we went to a maternity hospital. This is the third location where we have reached, and what you see around me is large-scale destruction.
I'm Patrick Lancaster, and this is a special report for Republic Media Network. This is a former Ukrainian military position on the front line for the last 8 years. But DPR forces and Russian forces have captured this position and area that we're in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic and Russian-controlled territory.
बड़ी संख्या में लोग कीव की तरफ जा रहे हैं।
We have reached right at the ground zero. As you can see, no other global channel is at the spot.
टैंक की तस्वीर, ऐश्वर्या टैंक की तस्वीर।
What you see right now is the debris of this building when a projectile missile hit this building. Alexandra से हमने रिपोर्टिंग की, वहाँ पे हमने देखा कि रेजिडेंशियल इलाकों में ये शेलिंग हुई थी. This is the crater that has been created, the impact of the attack that took place.
पूरा का पूरा शहर खाली हो गया है। लाइव तस्वीर रिपब्लिक भारत पर एक्सक्लूसिव। टैंक के साथ साथ रिपब्लिक भारत की टीम आगे बढ़ रही है।
You see right now our fighter jets on the skies of Kiev, caught on Republic cameras. Republic Media Network has now reached the spot where just about 2 days ago, where an aerial bombing took place inside a school. What you see right now is the debris all around. It is just massive. Just take a look at this. With the impact of the missile that was dropped by the Sukhoi, this is the extent of damage that has actually taken place.
Right behind me, you can see this tractor that is demolishing former military position of the Ukraine army. We can see a bridge over here that was destroyed, we're told by the locals, by Ukrainian forces.
There's a siren alert that has taken place, I think, so we'll have to move out from here.